Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully, we'll get through this one without a minimum of issues with the technology, and we'll keep going forward. I'm just going to go ahead and go through a quick couple of brief things. There is no, just to clarify, there is no Mind Tap this week. That's due. There's nothing that's graded in the Mind Tap area. Just this short assignment on the motivation at Disney and the actual virtual environments, which is obviously due this evening. Um, so as we go down through here, I posted an announcement today on some clarifications to the case study. Not a problem. We can actually go through that. Just if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and then you've got your cases to choose from. And you'll be posting those in this discussion one right here. So, pretty simple this week. Nothing really drastically different, but we'll get into the meat of things. No pun intended by my part. When we take a look at this aspect here of let me go ahead and stop the share here, and then I'm going to go back to sharing. We're going to go back here and share this one, and we're going to go forward here. Let's see here. There we go. So we'll kind of dive into chapters 3 and 4 here a little bit, making sure that everybody can see that really well and that we're on the right page. Okay, we're all good. Okay, so as we take a look at this, we're diving into this week into motivation. Okay, into this motivational framework. So when you take a look at this motivational framework, um, what you're seeing here is this aspect of, you know, how things work. Okay. So you start out with looking at satisfying needs, and you're looking for ways to do that. And then your next part of this is goal oriented behaviors. Then you put those behaviors into action. Then you experience some rewards or punishment. Then you reassess whether you've got some areas to work on still, and then so you're reassessing there, and then you experience what need still needs to be filled there, and then we go back to searching for ways to satisfy that. So it's this kind of circular aspect. This is how motivation works. Um, it's exactly how motivation works. So if you take a look at this, the nature of motivation is this kind of spells it out. Is you have a need that needs to be filled, then there's a need deficiency, which is something that's going to trigger the satisfying of that need. You've got some goal directed behaviors from individuals trying to satisfy those deficiencies. So whatever your action, this is action. Okay, so you've got the need, you've got a shortage of that need. Then you're going to put some action to act on that, and then you're going to receive either a reward or punishment. Rewards are positive, punishments are negative, and then you're going to reassess. Okay, so did that get the comp? This is what the process, whether you know it or not. We go through this tons of times a day when we're dealing with employees. This is what happens in management. Okay, we have to figure out what each employee is going to need, and then go through this process with every employee. Okay. So when we take a look at this aspect of motivation, the nature of motivation, okay, so we have the individual differences in how motivation works. So when you take a look at a task-specific self-efficacy, yeah, if I can talk right, it's a person's belief in his capabilities to do what is required. Okay, so we have three aspects of this. Okay, and I'm going to start from the bottom here, the generality. So this is the beliefs in the degree that the actual that all tasks can be accomplished that are along those lines. So if you're writing a paper, okay, and you believe you can write an English paper, then you should be able to write a business paper. So you're actually applying that same set of beliefs to a similar task. Okay, then how strong you believe that, and is all about confidence, is how believe you can. I absolutely know I can write that English paper. You know, I've written them plenty of times before. I know that I can. So you've got that strength. Okay. And then you get the magnitude is okay. Strength is how strong you feel. The magnitude is basically how large you feel. Well, how you manage to get that accomplished. Okay. So you're really kind of working in these three areas. Now, sometimes you're a little hesitant. Okay. So your strength might not be quite up there, and your belief might not be, your magnitude of your belief might not be there. Okay. So you've got to, it kind of works this way: magnitude, strength, generality. It all goes back to, and I know everybody here has this aspect of Maslow's needs. Okay. Everybody at this point should have had this. This should be review. Maslow is definitely is the grandfather of the aspect of motivational needs. Okay. And just for a quick review, okay, most people, as a manager in these two areas, we can't really affect that. If a person is in security and psychological needs area, it's difficult to motivate them because, I use this example all the time. If you're homeless, okay, then we can't really, it's hard for you to get to this aspect of belonging and esteem because you're homeless. Okay. You don't have that security. You don't have that psychological need that you're going to need to have to make that happen. So this is we act mostly in this middle round as managers in the esteem and belongingness. Okay. And then this last self-actualization, that's kind of when you move beyond these that are needed, and the individual figures out how to actually become that self-actualization person. So this is kind of a meeting between motivation and the individual person and how they react to things. So kind of after Maslow, and you guys should also know this, be it from organizational behavior in the undergrad area, is this aspect of ERG, existence, relatedness, growth. Okay, and these so ERG, so these kind of go back to this aspect of Maslow. Okay, existence under ERG is these needs down here. Okay, oops, and then relatedness is this aspect of the belonging and the esteem, and this last part of growth is really what you're looking at in this last one, the self-actualization. It's just a different researcher who took a little bit different approach to it. Okay. And this is this aspect of, okay, you're going to be motivating more people than one person at a time. So you're going to want to really kind of we kind of a broad base this, but it doesn't really, it still's not a complete one. Another way of looking at it, Hertzberg look at this as two factors. Okay, motivation and hygiene. Hygiene factors are those basic ones at the bottom of the pyramid on Maslow: security and physiological needs. And then hygiene. The hygiene factor, or those are hygiene factors. Then your motivational factors are these ones that fall in these three categories here. And that's how Hertzberg broke it down. Okay, so when we take a look at this, and this looks at the aspect of Hertzberg, his two-factor theory is satisfaction, dissatisfaction. Okay, and he rates these aspects on satisfaction, no, whether you have dissatisfaction or you don't have dissatisfaction, or satisfaction or no satisfaction on these needs. So when you take a look at Hertzberg, okay, he's looking at this as hygiene factors can be either dissatisfying or they just are there. Okay, which means there's no dissatisfaction. So if you're unhappy with your pay, okay, then you're dissatisfied. But if you're happy with your pay, you're happy with your pay. There's no dissatisfaction there. Okay, and the other part of this satisfaction on this other aspect you've got here is you've got things that can be, if you have no satisfaction, it is a negative. Okay, and if you have satisfaction, that's a positive, and that makes it motivational. What makes it a hygiene factor is that if you are dissatisfied, it's a negative. But if it's a hygiene factor and you're not dissatisfied, it's just neutral. There's no There's no other way of looking at that. Okay. So when you take a look at this, you've got also this aspect of equity theory. Okay. This aspect of equity and process theories. Okay. Equity theories means there's a value to it. Okay. And it can go right back to this aspect of satisfaction, dissatisfaction here. Okay, so equity theories is all about satisfying needs are this aspect of being treated fairly and equitably. Process theories believe these theories are based on perspectives that will allow you to satisfy needs. Okay, so process theories are about no pun intended, about the process. Okay, so you're basically looking for ways to satisfy through your actions this aspect of process of being satisfying goals. Whereas equity is about how people are treated. Okay, so if you're being treated unfairly, it goes back here to this aspect of dissatisfaction in the aspect under Hertzberg. Okay, so you can actually make this happen. So if you look at this, this kind of works its way out here. Equity, this is a different way of looking at it. Equity allows you to maintain the current situation. In other words, not dissatisfied. On the other side of this, in equity, actually you want to reduce those by changing inputs, changing outcomes, changing perceptions, but you're going to do something that's going to be able to allow that inequity to go away when you're looking at oneself, okay, when you're comparing yourself to another. So if you're equal to somebody, you are just equal. It's not a big deal. But if you're not, then it has this sense of inequity, and you've got to change something about that to bring yourself into line. Expectancy theory of motivation. We take a look at this. Expectancy theory is this aspect that you're expecting something out of the, and you're expecting an outcome versus the motivation. So when you put effort in, okay, so you're putting effort in to somehow modify performance. Okay, so you put in the effort into your performance, you're expecting an outcome to do better, right? Okay, now mind you, there's two of these other things that factor into performance: ability and the environment. Ability is this aspect of how well you do something. Have you been trained for it? Do you know do you understand the process? Do you understand how things work and fit into it? So do you have that ability to perform that task? Okay, the other part of this is the environment. If you go back to the Hawthorne studies in motivational theory, he looked at the environment in a very physical sense. He looked at it in the factories back in the 1950s and said, hey, if we improve lighting and improve working conditions, we improve this environment, we can increase performance. And he actually proved that. He actually proved that you can increase outcomes by improving the environment. And the environment can be a motivating factor. Now, Porter and Lawler, they kind of took it one step further. Okay, they may, as you could see here by the diagram, this is a little more complex. So you still got the effort, performance, and satisfaction. Okay, or the outcome. So, but what you've got here is you get this aspect, these two aspects in the beginning of value of reward and the probability of getting that reward. Okay, that increases your effort. So if you're I'll give you guys an example of this. So at a point where we're getting close to the end, we're looking at a $10,000 bonus. Okay, if we brought in our numbers under a certain amount, and we could actually bring that, so our effort to make that bonus was huge. Okay, so we perceived that our effort would get that, we could get that, and the value of that worked hand in hand to increase our effort. Okay, with that, we had the abilities and traits to make that happen. So they increased our performance, okay, to put out that last event, to make those, basically, at this case, it was both intrinsic rewards because we felt really good after doing it, and our extrinsic rewards where we actually got paid the bonus. So that immediately had this aspect of the equity of rewards and that sense of satisfaction. Both of these came together and made us feel really good. So Porter and Lawler adds in this aspect of rewards into the performance factor. Okay, so when we take a look at those as an expectancy theory is really tough to test. So we don't have a lot of research on expectancy theory. It's a little tougher to put your finger on. So you get this but you definitely need the value of expected rewards, belief in the efforts, and the belief in their performance. Now, current thinking now puts us into another realm of things with this aspect of social learning, okay, which means we learn for others, okay. So under classical learning, it's classical conditioning. You can keep repeating things over and over again until you acquire a skill level, okay. So you continue to practice that much like you practice a sport. Now, reinforcement theory says, hey, there's some other factors in here that can actually put into theory and to learning, okay? And you can reinforce the consequences of behavior, and you can reinforce behavior you can also behavior as a function of those consequences. So social learning, basically, good or bad, can actually when you observe the behavior of others, recognize those consequences and alter your own behavior because of it. Okay. It's learning by imitating, if you want to look at it that way. Okay. So behavior modifications and these types of things we have, this is traditional on this side. So you've got positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, punishment, and extinction. Okay. Extinction is a fancy word for firing. Okay. So when you get this aspect here, you've got this kinds of reinforcement, you can actually move forward with actual, this is the standard behavior modification model. Over here, we've got social learning, okay, which is acting upon one's behavior to change one's behavior based on what everybody else is doing. Okay, so you can actually learn from this aspect here. And that's what social learning is looking at. This kind of talks a little bit about the reinforcers. Positive reinforcement increases behavior, positive behavior. Extinction decreases that behavior because you're gone. Okay. Punishment decreases the behavior because obviously, you're looking at avoiding that. And negative reinforcement increases the behavior because you're basically telling somebody they can't do something. So it's one of those where the stimulus in here, whatever you're doing, this is how it reacts to that. If it's present, it's positive or it's negative. Okay. But if you remove it, extinction, it's definitely going to decrease the behavior because you're gone. And if you have a negative and you remove it, that negative reinforcement could increase the behavior. So when it boils down to motivation, much like this board, okay, because I kind of like this one, there's no single one answer. Okay, there's a lot of answers on here. Okay, and you have to kind of work in your magic as a manager and as a leader to figure out how you can manage that performance within your group and kind of work back and forth with these and figure out how to make how it makes it work for each individual. So you can take the theory, move it into operation, and it could make these things happen. So enhancing performance, you look at this, obviously we want to transform motivation into performance. So these are ways that we can change as managers, work to change behavior through motivation. Okay, but we're actually looking at enhancing the performance again by changing one of these. Okay, job design, employee participation, flexible work, goal setting, performance management, and organizational rewards. You're looking at improving this. Okay, so what we do here is over here is this is the motivation piece of this. Okay, now we're going to go in and look at actually the job itself. Okay, and how we can increase performance that is outside the aspect of motivation. Okay, so these are ways that the job design can be handled. Okay, First one is job rotation, which is just change the job. Okay. Move the person around so they're not bored. Okay. It also, we used to cross train and job rotate a lot of positions because it was easily handled by the individuals, and it provided for a much stronger team environment. There's a lot of understanding, a lot of learning that happens with that can actually systematically make this happen. Then you have job enlargement and job enrichment. Okay. Job enlargement is basically just giving you more to do. Okay. Whereas job enrichment, it's expanding your position. If you're trying to train somebody to be a supervisor, a lot of times you'll enlarge their jobs to be able to make that happen. Now, the other aspect of this is job learning. Okay. Job enrichment. Okay. So what you're actually doing there is giving them more ability to make decisions over their jobs. Okay. So all of these can play a role in this aspect of improving performance, because you get a better and more rounded employee when you do these things. Now, this complicated aspect is looking at job characteristics. Okay. So what you've got here is these are some core job dimensions. These are the psychological states that an employee goes through there in relation to that. And then you've got the personal outcomes and work outcomes. Okay. So here you've got skill, task, identity, and task significance. This all goes to the meaningfulness of the work. Okay. And then from there, you can jump off into its highly internal motivation. You can look at high work performance. If everything's good, you can look at, you can look at high satisfaction. You can also look at it lowers absenteeism and turnover. And the same is true for these. When you look at autonomy and the amount of individual work ability for them to help control over their job, and you've got feedback. Okay, all of these work in, as you can see, work in each of these areas to get much better outcomes from individuals. Now, participation and empowerment. Participation is giving them a voice about their decisions. Okay, so when you look at participation, areas of participation, you can look at things like job decisions, administrative management, matters. Okay, you can give them a little bit of work on their input on their schedule. Look at quality decisions. Ask their opinion about quality. And empowerment is giving them the ability to make their own decisions about goals. This is giving them a voice, not necessarily and giving them the ability to change anything, but empowerment gives you the ability to change stuff. So you're able to give employees decisions, making their own work, making their own work goals. Okay. How does their own work goals play into what you're doing? And then techniques and issues into employee involvement. So looking at giving up some of your decision-making power and giving it to them. I practice empowerment and participation in every aspect of every team I've actually ran or managed. And when you take a look at these are how you enact that as a leader. Okay, these are things that you can move and get them involved, get them in participation, using those tools to get involvement and engagement. Flexible work schedules is just that. Okay, figure out where you need to have people and where you may not need to have as many people. Okay, so if you're busiest in between the morning hours and the afternoon hours, so then you go ahead and say, okay, somebody can come in early, work through the middle part of this, and we can work through it. And then maybe they get cut off a little early in the afternoon. Okay, so you can have this full coverage, but you have this with the core times are fully covered, and then you spread out the rest of the work throughout the rest of the day, as an example. But basically, you're allowing them to flex the time that they're working. This works real well in the virtual environment because you can work for a few hours, go run an errand, come back, okay, and then continue your work. Goal setting. We're definitely talking a lot about goal setting in these cases. So you've got, goal difficulty, goal specificity. So you've got the goal directed effort. So you've got a goal that you've set aside. All these things play into that goal. Then once they play into it, then it's affecting the performance. And then in there, you get the organizational support and the again, the individual's abilities swinging out to the intrinsic and the extrinsic rewards into satisfaction. So we flow all the way through here again, very much like Porter and Lawler. Performance management. This is our systems for these are kind of more the ability to make things happen in a more formalized sense in the work. And you can take a look at these as the performance appraisal and performance management. Okay. You've got to have some kind of goal in performance management. So you're looking at this aspect of judgments of past performances, and then where you're expecting you to set goals to go forward. So you're managing that process with the employee, which is good that you have a formalized process to do that. These are some ways that you have to consider when these are ways then items that you have to consider when you're looking at this. Performance management considerations. It's got to be based on job criteria. Instruments got to be valid. You got to keep in check to make sure it's all equal and there's equal opportunity for everybody. There's plenty of different assessment problems, but it's all got to be a formalized system. That's the key there. This is kind of a different visualization of that, okay, where your vision and strategy, okay, works into, your internal business processes, your innovation, your customer goals, all play into this vision and strategy of the way the organization works. These are individual rewards. Again, we kind of all know these and how they can impact. This is kind of I kind of stuck this towards the end because this is realistically pretty easy to see. These are these extrinsic rewards that, we have a little say over as managers, but not a whole lot. And again, these are some ways of looking at benefits from the intrinsic side for individual rewards. Now, these are the issues that you have to come into play with when you're considering this aspect of employee motivation. The more involved they are in the system, the more likely they are. This one on the bottom here really refers to expatriate compensation is if you're a global company and you're relocating somewhere overseas, you have to make sure that there's, for instance, if you're relocating from the US, from like say, Arizona or the Midwest somewhere, and you're moving to Germany, you're going to have some cost of living differentials in your pay. And otherwise it's not going to be equitable. And this kind of basically looks at the ways, if you're looking at moving somebody into the global environment, okay, you've got look at the being compensated for these boxes here, these blue ones, okay? You've got the taxes on the US side. You've also got foreign taxes. Okay. Having worked abroad, I know how this works. Okay. Because you end up being double taxed. For instance, here you've got some consumption there. In the US, you may not have these, but over there, you're going to have these aspects of the foreign costs. When I worked over there, they paid my housing. My salary was comparable, but they paid my housing. Paid a lot of my indirect expenses of living there, so which allowed me to make up for this double taxation issue here. And then the savings part of this is, okay, you've got this aspect of what it would cost to live in the US, and if there's a hardship or there's a premium that needs to be paid by the company, you've got to actually make that happen. Okay, and then this kind of, I like this spreadsheet because it kind of lays out what we can and can't do. So these gives you your challenges. These are kinds of things that you can look at where we could possibly impact that behavior. All right, that'll end up our quick discussion for this week. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. Look forward to seeing you in the class soon.